Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of Road to the Blue Map. It is week 10 here with Average Joe Sports Talk. This episode presented by Little Pink Houses. Little Pink Houses construction company started with the concept it takes a woman's touch to make a house a home. Our licensed builder and main designers are women. We not only build a great home, but we act as the designer, assist in fixture choices, and finishes through the build out or reno. Basically, a one stop shop for luxury renovations and new homes construction. Let us help you make the hard decisions that normally you pay an exterior designer and architect to do over the cost of the builder. Make sure to check out Little Pink Houses Construction. You can scan that barcode right there on the front of the page, and they'll take you to their website and show you everything that you need to know about Little Pink Houses. And they have been with us all year this year, and we appreciate their support and being with us here with Average Joe Sports Talk, and each week allowing us to bring you Road to the Blue Map, where we break down all the biggest games and all the big action around the AHSAA. Crazy that we are here now at week 10, as I've lost Bo now here on the feed. So far right now it is just me by myself. So I'll tell you a little bit more about Little Pink House's construction. They've done a great job up there and going. I've also, they're the ones that did the Henry House. We talk about the Henry House all the time, things like that. And so they did the Henry House. So make sure to check out Little Pink House's construction. They do a great job on construction. Like it says, they'll give you that woman's flair. If you're looking for maybe a she home or she room or something like that somewhere, Little Pink House Construction can help you put it together, design it, and get it there the way that you want it. So got Bo back on the screen here and ready to go. And Bo, crazy week 10, last week of the regular season here for the AHSAA. And it goes by fast. I mean, it feels like the other day that I was down at the Crampton Bowl doing Thompson, Opelika, Beauregard, Selma, and then we had all those week 1 games going on there, week 0 games, and here we are now. We know who's in the playoffs. We pretty much know every. I mean, there's going to be a couple of games that will matter towards some teams getting in, not getting in, where they're seated, things like that this week. But for the most part, we kind of know everything, and now getting geared up. A big week for a lot of these teams we're going to talk about, trying to get some momentum and really put those last pieces together to get ready for a big playoff push.
Yeah, and shout out to Little Pink Houses, you mentioned, for their continued support of women's athletics throughout the state of Alabama. They've been a big part of getting these women spotlighted before we dive into this football playoff picture and week right here. But you're correct, man. This is it's a weird time of year because, like you said, it seems like we were just down there and this thing was kicking off, and now here we are 1 week away from the playoffs. A little bit still to be decided, but a lot of people's moved their games to Thursday in preparation for the playoffs. But there is some meat on the bone, definitely a lot of meat on the bone that we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm excited about ready to go.
We appreciate all you guys tuning in. Obviously we didn't do one last night due to Halloween and everybody being out, and us just expecting other people to be doing things as well. And so didn't have a show last night, and then due to us doing this on Wednesday where we normally don't do it, both myself and Bo had other things that we had planned, so we couldn't get together like we normally do. But luckily we got technology that's able to get us together here when we're in different places, and now getting ready to get into these games. And we again appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure to support all these different businesses that support us here with Average Joe's, because we couldn't do what we do and bring these shows to you each and every week without those people and their support. So getting things started for us, Bo, is a lot more Thursday games this week than we normally have. It's a ton of Thursday games. If you're looking for Thursday action, you're going to be able to find it this week. And we got a big one right up there in the northeast part of the state to get things kicked off here at Road to the Blue Map.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Collinsville is traveling up to Valley Head. That's going to be a big game. Last year, this same time 1 year ago, Valley Head was undefeated and visited Collinsville and actually left out of there with a loss. And it was a very good football game. I got to see that game last year. This game I expect to be another very good football game. Caleb, Collinsville's quietly having a fantastic season. They got the 2 losses, the losses to Fife and the losses to Pisgah. But outside of that, man, they've really just kind of handled business with everybody. And, watching them grow this year has been really fun. I had defensive coordinator Chris Condy on the show this week, on Ernie Willingham's show. And, to see the growth of his defense has been really, really fun to watch. And they're starting to catch up with that offense, so to speak, as far as production wise, and that's the good thing heading into these playoffs because they're going to be playing Southeastern next week. And last week's game against North Sand Mountain was basically a play-in game. Winner goes to Southeastern, loser goes to Locust Fork, which is where you do not want to go play in the first round of the playoffs. But on Valley Head's side of things, Valley Head has got second place in the region this year. They were the region champs last year. They've outscored their opponents 225-63 since the Coosa Christian game, 5-game winning streak on the field, and they host Raglan next week. So I expect a tremendous game from this game right here because Valley Head's really tough to beat at home, and that's going to be a test for Collinsville. The next game we're going to be looking at is going to be Weaver at Pleasant Valley. This is a inter-county rivalry game. This is going to be a really good game. Weaver is actually favored in this game, Caleb, by 9, according to AFA. How do you pronounce it, Caleb? AHS.
AHSFHS.
There you go. According to them, Weaver's favored 9 in this game, and that's good because it's bulletin board material for Coach Nix and company at Pleasant Valley. Pleasant Valley started the season off 4-0, then lost 4 straight, and won 50-20 over Gaston last week. So next week they got to travel to Pisgah, and that's not a fun place to play if you're a visitor. But Weaver is much improved. You've seen them play this year. You said it out of the gate. They look like a much improved football team right out of the gate when you've seen them early this year, and they haven't let down. They've got 3 wins on the year already. They're 1-5 in region play, but the improvement is week to week, and that's all you can ask for as a team, to improve each and every week, and I think they've done that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And looking back at your first game, that matchup next week, Raglan and Valley Head, that's going to be a fun one. Get things started.
That's going to be a real fun one. Yeah. That's going to be a real fun one.
Speaking of fun games, a big fun one that's down there in the southwest part of the state. A lot of people may not know a ton about this game, but Clark County at Thomasville, huge rivalry game down there in Clark County for these two programs. Thomasville's had a fantastic year. They're 7-1. They're 6-1 in region play. Their only loss came last week to Mobile Christian, who may be the favorite to go win 3A this year. So, that's their only loss on the year. You look at Clark County, they're 5-4, but they're 5-0 in the region. They've won their region games. They've dominated their classification. And then they've gone out and they've challenged themselves against other people. They started the season 1-4. A lot of that was due to those non-region games. They've won 4 straight, and they've won these 4 straight by a combined, Bo, 149-15 in these 4 games. So they've been dominating teams. Their 4 losses are to Sweetwater, Leroy, who won it last year, Strawn, and Milry. And Strawn's 8-1 on the season as well. So it's been a good year for Clark County. They're going to play Vincent. They host Vincent next week, a Vincent team who started out great, kind of hit a skid here to end off the year and wasn't playing as good. Big opportunity for them to really get hot now going into the postseason, but same here for Thomasville. And Thomasville, they need to get themselves geared up, and they got to get over this loss last week. It's always interesting to see teams who've gone undefeated up to this point. Randolph County was a team in 3A last year that had a year very similar to Thomasville, where they were undefeated, and then they match up with Dadeville, and Dadeville blows them out. Randolph County ends up losing week 10. They lost week 1 in the playoffs. They were out of the playoffs. So Thomasville has to make sure that they don't allow that to happen again this year. They get a big rivalry game here with Clark County to kind of emotionally get back up. And then they get a rematch with Dadeville, who they knocked out in the second round last year, next week in the first round. So big game here for Thomasville, but a big game for Clark County, the lower classification team playing a higher classification team, and a chance for them to really make a big statement if they could find a win here going into the postseason.
And for those who do not know, there'll be a lot of talent on that field when those two hook up on both sides of the ball. This next game is going to be a big one in the Birmingham area. Caleb's going to be Helena, who's 8-1, 5-1 in region play, traveling over to Vestavia, who's 7-2, 5-2 in region play. Line on this game is 11 Vestavia, and Vestavia has really played some good football this year. I don't have to tell you that; you already know. Their only losses was to Thompson and Hewitt Trustful. Outside of that, they've outscored their opponents 270-46, and they will be traveling to Austin next week. But I don't think, that's not going to be anything that they're going to be scared of. And that's no offense to Austin. It's just Vestavia is that good. Helena is 8-1 on the year, 5-1 in region play. But Caleb, they did have a slip up against your alma mater, Benjamin Russell, last week with a 20-17 loss. They finished second in the region, and they will be hosting Wetumpka. But in their 8 wins this season, Caleb, they've outscored their opponents 334-92. We had coach's show with Coach Busby last year, got to know him really well, and his expectations last year were through the roof. This year, they're even higher. They have one of the best running backs in the state, and Mr. Washington. And I don't know, Caleb. This is a good game. It's a risky game to schedule 2 teams with this good heading into the playoffs from an injury standpoint. But if you can, the main thing both of these coaches want to do is get out of this game healthy and get ready for those playoffs, because I playing it on a Thursday is a smart move in case you do get somebody dinged up. You want to talk about talent? That's another game that's got talent across the board right there.
Yeah, there'll be some really good talent in that ball game. And again, Helena's kind of in the same boat we just talked about with Thomasville, where they were 8-0. They lose. They get for the second year in a row. Last year they got making the playoffs ripped from them by losing, and then they turned around and got dominated by Vestavia. This year they're at least in the playoffs and they'll be hosting, but they got the region championship taken. How do they emotionally respond, I think, is going to be something to really watch with Helena. And look, if they can turn around and play really well in this game, it builds up a lot of momentum for them heading into next week and being able to play in the playoffs. So should be a fun one there. Gardendale at Hueytown. This will be your AHSAA TV game of the week. So we will have this on Thursday night. I'll be on the call doing color commentary with Mickey Shaddricks, and we'll be on WOTM and any My 68 and any other channels that you can normally find. The HSA TV network. You can also download the WOTM app on Roku, Apple TV, Fire Stick, any of those. Find the game there. It's an interesting matchup because you have a Gardendale team that started the season 0-5, Bo, and they're now sitting at 3-6. They're 3-1 over their last 4 games. Their wins aren't necessarily against the best of teams, Jackson, Olin, Minor, Woodlawn, teams that didn't necessarily have great years this year, but they got the wins that they needed to in region play, the important wins to put them at 3-3 and get them into the postseason. And you can tell they're starting to play better here towards the end of the year. And that shows last week. How many teams put up 42 points on Mountain Brook? No, not very many.
Not very many.
6, and Gardendale, that's where they struggled, is defensively this year, big time. But not many teams put up 42 points on Mountain Brook. They're starting to get things going offensively at the right time. And a lot of people up in this Gadsden area that are watching the show need to pay attention, because they play Gadsden City to open up the year next year, or open up the playoffs next week. And, could be a very interesting game with how they're getting going offensively. And so they're going to get a Hueytown team who's been playing really good defensively. Started out the year 1-3 for the second year in a row, but listen to these opponents that they play. Ramsey, Clay Chalkville, and Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. That's 3 of their first 4 teams. And so they lost to those 3. We're talking about 2 state champions possibly out of that group, and the only reason there's not 3 is because Clay Chalkville and Hillcrest would have to play each other. So There's a possibility. Everybody's hyping up Saraland, Clay Chalkville. We've been telling you all year, hey, watch for Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. They could be the one team that could play defense well enough to get Saraland, and they were able to find out. Hueytown was able to find out early in the year about that. They start 1-3. They're now on a 5-game winning streak. They've beaten their teams by a combined 227-77 over this 5-game winning streak. So second year in a row that Hueytown has kind of started off rough, but they've really found themselves out. Last year they beat Benjamin Russell in the first round of the playoffs. They don't know their opponent for next week, but they know they will host. And so they're kind of waiting to see how some other games shake up and things shake up there. But should be a really, really interesting matchup with Gardendale and Hueytown. I'm really interested to see how Gardendale, if they can keep improving heading into next week, they might could give that Gadsden City team a few problems next week.
Yeah, that's a game a lot of people, I think, Gadsden City will have some eyes on, because, them playing in front of the state like that and Gadsden City being off, I'm sure a lot of Gadsden City people will be watching that game. And you're right, that can be a very dangerous game for Gadsden City. So they definitely need to pay attention to how much improved that team is. With Coach Eads and company at Gardendale. Next game, we're going to kick off our Friday coverage with Coosa Christian is traveling over to Victory Christian in the Pell City area. Coosa is favored really big in this, with Terry Etheridge as the head coach at Victory Christian, who is the brother of Keith Etheridge. And he does a fantastic job there and has this year. They started the season out 4-2, and they had three straight losses by a combined 143-45. And those three losses was to some good teams though: Raglan, Wadley, and Winterboro. Missed the playoffs with the Winterboro loss, unfortunately, so they are out of the playoffs. Coosa Christian had those games, removed from their win column earlier this season, but has since earned it on the field. Sat some guys out. They've had to play restitution and set some guys out, and they lost to Geraldine out of the gate. That's nothing to be ashamed of. Geraldine's a really good football team. But outside of that, they've outscored their opponents 350-39 and has not given up a point defensively since September 1st, and that was to Spring Garden. So, and that's coincidentally who they're going to play in the first round. They're going to travel to Spring Garden. So I know a lot of eyeballs will be on that game to see Coosa Christian go back to Spring Garden. We actually got to see Spring Garden today. Caleb, Ace and them were playing in the state championship today, state championship tournament today. So we got to see them, and some of the football guys are definitely there supporting them, doing a really good job. So it's Garden's one of those schools that there's a lot of pride there with those guys, and it seems like they're always in the championship mix and everything in 1A, whatever sport it may be. So to see those football players there supporting those young ladies, that's really, really good. And I look for this game right here for Victor Christian is going to be about pride, man. How do you want to end your season? Your playoffs got ripped from you, but I know you want to end on a good note. It's a very tough opponent, Coosa Christian. They got to be playing, but your seniors, you don't want them to go out with a loss, and you want to win this one for them. And for Coosa, it's keeping everybody healthy, being prepared for these playoffs next week, get some guys some reps in there. And I'm sure they're going to want to go in there and score big like they have been doing and try to get some guys in, some playing time, some reps for some guys because here at the playoff time, it's here, Caleb. So this is going to be one of those games where it's going to be interesting to see how both of those coaches attack this game. Our next game is going to be Southeastern. They're traveling over to Appalachian. Appalachian's had an up and down year. They're 4-5, 2-4 in region play. Southeastern is a heavy favorite in this one. They're favored by 20 in this one, Caleb. But, the interesting fact about this game is there's a lot of eyeballs from Collinsville, Alabama, going to be on this one because that's where Collinsville's going next week for the first week of the playoffs. So, the interesting season for Southeastern. They started the season out 3-1, 2-2 over the last four, though. So it's been up and down. But Caleb, those two losses is to Locust Fork and JB Pennington.
Yeah.
So that's that's not to hang your head down about because that's two very good football teams right there. And Appalachian, they've had some injuries, man. It's kind of limited them. It's a very tough season for them. If I'm not mistaken, they won the 1A baseball championship last year, though, correct? So there's some guys there. This is another one of those gut check things for them because they have no playoffs, unfortunately. I believe Cedar Bluff won that in a three-way tie, if I'm not mistaken. They got it. They got the nod, I believe. So yeah, they're eliminated from playoffs. So again, it's much like we talked about with Victory. They want to end the season on a big note, but this is a very tough team to do that with. And I know all eyes from Collinsville, Alabama, will be on this game because they want to see what this opponent they're going to look at. And Appalachian will present a good product on the field, so Collinsville can get a good look at what they're going to be facing.
Yeah, should be interesting. I think the biggest thing if you're Appalachian this week, from that coaching staff, I'm saying, hey, look, guys, you have a chance to get to 500 this year.
That's right.
Program that has a lot of losing seasons, and football's not been their strong suit, and they've had a pretty decent year this year, and that's what that's how you motivate this group this week. Say, you guys have a chance to end 500, above 500, be one of those teams that didn't finish with a losing record, and a chance to go beat Southeastern, kind of ruin some of their momentum going into the playoffs next week as well. But then you're talking about Southeastern. I mean, you look at their losses: Raglan, Locust Fork, and JB Pennington this year. Man,
it's incredible.
So it'll be interesting to see how them and Collins will play next week. I look forward to talking about that ball game. Dave will be traveling to Wicksburg. I'll be going to this one on Friday. It'll be a long trip. For those that don't know where Wicksburg is, it's down there right beside Dothan, Headland, all those, in that area down there. So be about a 3-hour trip to get down there Friday and get back Friday night. It's a non-region game. It'll be interesting to see how Dave bounces back. Dave was a team that went undefeated in the regular season last year. They were 11-0 going into the second round. Got beat by Thomasville. Now this year they're 4-3. They're 4-2 in the region. They lost to Walter Welborn at the beginning of the year, and then they lost to BB Comer to start the season. So both those losses pretty good. You got 10-0 BB Comer and 7-2 Welborn, who's probably about to move to 8-2. But last week they played Randolph County at Randolph County for region championship. Dave ended up being without their best player, Jay Burns, who possibly will be out again this week due to a hamstring injury that he suffered the day before the game on Thursday last week, and what I was told was kind of a freak thing. So it'll be interesting. You look at Wicksburg; they started the year 1-3. Then they got on a 3-game winning streak before their last two, where they played Ayrton and GW Long, who are two very, very good teams down in that area, not only in baseball but in football as well. They lost 49-42 to Ayrton, 31-26 to GW Long, and Wicksburg better try to build some momentum, Bo, because they go to real team the first round next week. So they're going to have their work cut out for them next week. And Dave will be, I think, a really good challenge for them getting ready for that. And I think Wicksburg will be a good challenge for Dave getting ready to go to Thomasville next week, not only with a long trip like that before you take the long trip to Thomasville, but just the physicality that Wicksburg's going to play with, I think will be very similar to what Thomasville the next week. This is a big ball game up in the northeast part of the state. We normally talk about North Jackson at Pisgah on Friday night. This will be a fun football game that could have a lot of points scored in this ball game, Bo. I think you're looking at a North Jackson team that got off to a rough start, 0-5. We were all kind of looking around going, man, what's wrong? What's happening at North Jackson? We weren't really expecting this. Next thing you know, they've won 4 straight. That's gotten them into the playoffs. They don't know their opponent yet, but they just finished scoring over 80 points last week. And Pisgah's done well defensively at times this year, but they also do have a game where they gave up 56-5, 27 Lexington early in the year. And so some teams that have been able to put it together offensively have scored some points. It'll be really interesting to see how Pisgah's defense plays against this North Jackson team, but I think it'll be a really good test for them going into the postseason, where they may run into a Locust Fork or somebody like that before they even get back to Fife that can put up some points. So I think it's a very good test for them here to end the year, and you're getting a team that's extremely hot. Like I said, they've won 4 straight games going into this, and they got into the playoffs. They've found life. I think it's a very good challenge here for Pisgah getting ready for the postseason next week, as they'll get Pleasant Valley and host them at home here to get things started in the playoffs.
Yeah, that North Jackson team has seemed to find lightning in the bottle in the back half of the season, and it was 85-14 last week over DAR or something like that. Yeah, they've really started scoring, and that's an inter-county rivalry. So that'll be another interesting factor about that. And I look for a lot of people to be in Pisgah, Alabama for that game. That'll be a big game. This next one's a big game for an Etowah. And if you live in Etowah County, we're going to have West End traveling over to Glencoe. West End's had an interesting season, Caleb. There was a lot of expectations there. He added Coach Matt Harris. Coach Sewell added Coach Matt Harris to his staff when he left Gaston, which I thought was a tremendous hire. West End started the season 1-3, then went on a 4-game winning streak where they kind of flexed their muscles and really did a lot of good things. But then they end up losing to Locust Fork in a big game. But, Caleb, we've said this, and it sounds like a broken record. How many times have we said they ended up losing to Locust Fork? I mean, we've said it over and over this year.
So
I think they're averaging second most points in the state, 1 through 7A.
They're averaging 54.4 and giving up 10 a game. So they scored their opponents I saw it today, 544 to 100 this year.
Jeez.
They're averaging beating people 55-10, basically. I mean, that's ridiculous.
That's incredible, a margin of victory there.
Nobody's talking about them. I mean, they're in a great spot to me going into the postseason.
Oh, they're in a perfect spot. But when West End, what West End did when they was winning those 4 games, they were putting the ball on the ground, running it, being physical. They got a really big physical offensive line there, and they do a really good job of making you snap it one more time defensively. Coach Sewell was a very successful coach at Raglan before he came over here. He's brought that weight room mentality, tough physical football over here to Walnut Grove and West End. He's doing a fantastic job. Glencoe's had an interesting season to say the least. A lot of expectations for them this year. They've had a lot of injuries. They started out, they beat Weaver 24-20 right out of the gate. And since then, they went 1-7 down the stretch. And that one win was over Holly Pond, 49-18. They've lost pretty rough games in region play. They've been outscored a combined 348 to 113. But let's think Scott Martin's first trip to the rodeo. He'll get things turned around there. It's just going to take a little time because they've had some guys transfer out. They've had some other things happen over there that's kind of set them back a little bit. But Scott Martin's been in this situation before. He was in a situation like this at Ohatchee when he arrived. And, with the help of Bobby Tittle, who's now at Cherokee County, they turned that program around and made it one of the most dominant programs in the state for a stretch there that they were there together. And I look for the same thing is going to be happening at Glencoe. It may take a little more time, but they're definitely taking some steps in the right direction. It ain't one of those things, Caleb, where you just add water and steer and it's instant offense or instant defense. You got to put time and effort in off season stuff, and these guys will, and they will turn that thing around. But this should be a really good football game here in Etowah County. I believe that wholeheartedly. Those two teams will really go after each other, and I know Scott Martin wants to end the season on a good note there.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be the message, and it'd be huge for that program. Then you'd have a lot of positivity going into this off season and building into next year, where it'd really kind of be his program at that point. Now, in my opinion, three. So, Douglas at North Sand Mountain on Friday night. Douglas is 2-6, 0-5 in the region going in. Believe it or not, they're a 19-point favorite here against North Sand Mountain on Friday night, according to AHS. FHS. Douglas has had a weird season. They started the year 2-0, a good win over Susan Moore, DAR, and then they've lost 6 straight on the field. After that, we had them in for Keeping Up Marshall County Athletics a couple weeks ago, and they told us, they said, look, we've just been, from the get-go, we've been hurt. They lost a major player to start the year, one of their best players, they said, really, that they counted on to before the season even really started, and they've lost countless guys in between. And, they're a place that plays guys on both sides of the ball, so when you lose a guy, you're losing 2 starters, basically, with a lot of these guys. And I think it's really hurt this Douglas team. Would be a great way for them to end the season, same way that we just kind of talked about with Glencoe, build some momentum into next year and get things going. On the other side from North Sand Mountain, they've had a good year. When you look at it for the most part, their losses are to 5, Pisgah, and Collinsville. That's just 3 of their losses here out of the 4. So they've got their work cut out for them. They better figure it out offensively because they go to Locust Fork next week in the first round of the playoffs, and better be able to put up some points because and that's been the thing with Locust Fork. They figured it out defensively after the first about 3 games of the year, and they're a complete team right now. So they're going to have their work cut out for them next week. Good opportunity here against Douglas. Build some confidence against them. Beat a team of a higher classification. And, try to build some momentum and some confidence as you head into a tough task. But, hey, who would have thought last year, Bo, that Parker would beat Clay Chalkville in the first round?
Nobody.
We see it every year where a 1 seed ends up getting upset by a 4 seed. So now's your opportunity, North Sand Mountain. Build up some momentum, get yourself ready, and have a chance to go and shock the whole entire state next week with a big game like that. Again, we want to thank Little Pink Houses Construction for their support here with us, and Average Joe's Sports Talk. Little Pink Houses started with the concept it takes a woman's touch to make a house a home. Our licensed builder and main designers are women. We not only build a great home, we act as the designer, assist in fixture choices and finishes through the build out or reno. Basically a one-stop shop for luxury renovations and new homes construction. Let us help you make the hard choices or hard decisions that normally you pay an interior designer and architect to do over the cost of the builder. Again, we appreciate Little Pink Houses Construction Company for their sponsorship with us and Average Joe Sports Talk. You can scan that link right there on the page, and it'll take you to their website and show you everything that they do, all that they have to offer, and maybe they can help you and your family out with any type of projects that you have coming up here in the future. So getting back into our games, another game that's not really up in our area that we cover all the time with Average Joe's, but as we've talked about, we're getting close to the postseason now, so we're trying to let you guys know about certain teams to be watching out for. And these two teams will be teams to watch out for as the postseason gets going here soon. T.R. Miller at W.S. Neal on Friday night. This is a huge rivalry game. This is a game that these two communities are right there beside each other. Down there as you're on your way down, towards Mobile. And a lot of pride in both of these teams as well. W.S. Neal hasn't necessarily always been great, but they've gotten better over the last couple of years, and they've made this game a lot bigger, back to being bigger as it was at one time. And it's been a lot of fun over the last couple of years, and it should be a fun one here on Friday night with these two teams as well. You look at T.R. Miller, I'm sure everybody has seen the play that happened this Friday night. It's been all over social media, the pass into the end zone. It definitely hit the ground and then bounces up, and the kid for St. Michael's catches it, and they end up winning in overtime. So T.R. Miller could be 7-2 and 6-1 in region coming into this right here had that not happened last week, and really probably should be, and so they should be a little bit better record-wise. And you look at their only other two losses on the year would be to UMS Wright, 16-14, a game that could have gone either way. And then Jackson, 38-7, who we've talked about for a long time, is one of the favorites to make it out of 4A South and have a chance to go compete for a state championship. If T.R. Miller wins this game, they need a win here for tiebreaker purposes with Bayside Academy. They're tied with Bayside. They're playing for the 2 or 3 seed, and so they need to win here to help their chances with being able to host next week, or they could go on the road, which would make that what happened last week there with St. Michael's even worse, for them if they end up having to travel really because of something like that. So on the other side for W.S. Neal, you look at their 2 losses. We talked about earlier, Thomasville. They beat them this season, and then Mobile Christian also beat them. Those 2 teams are combined 17-1, and there's only 7 ones that had to play each other last week. They've outscored everybody else 290-124. And they're going to travel to Randolph County next week, and that'll be a very, very interesting game there in the 3A playoffs, having to go to Randolph County. And like I said, I saw Randolph County this past week, and W.S. Neal and them should be a really fun matchup. So, look, big rivalry game here. You can't get too high emotionally because both teams are in the playoffs next week, and that's what you risk when you play these rivalry games, very late in the season like this. One team getting way too high and not really being able to bounce back. And so, both coaching staffs will have to watch for that, but it should be a fun game between those 2 teams and them kind of gearing up for a postseason run. Cleveland County at Walter Welborn. It's been a great year for Walter Welborn. Started out the year 0-2, but their losses were to Anniston and Ohatchee, who, are in higher classifications than them, 38-22, 26-7. That's also when Ohatchee was playing really well at the beginning of the year and was healthy and had their full team together. Since then, Walter Welborn's won 7 straight after the bye week that they had after those 2 losses by a combined 317-167. And they'll host Flomaton next week. Flomaton's all the way down, basically right beside Florida. So it's going to be a long, long trip for Flomaton to come up to Walter Welborn. That should be an advantage for them. It's always tough to play on the hill up there anyways at Walter Welborn. And so, for Cleveland County, they're not getting in the playoffs. They started the year 3-1. They've lost 5 straight since. So it's been a very tough end of the year. Chance to end the year on a high note. That's how you got to push it to your team this week. Hey, look, chance to go out on a high note, have some momentum going into next year, some confidence, and beat a really good football team in the process of it. So it'll be interesting. Welborn's kind of in a boat where this game doesn't really matter for them, and so I wonder. It'll be interesting to see how their coaching staff treats it. Do you play everybody 2.5 quarters and then take some guys out? And, it'll be interesting to kind of see how some of these coaches deal with this week. But Walter Welborn, should be able to go take care of business here, be 8-2 heading into the playoffs and being able to host Flomaton next week.
Walter Welborn, buddy. The playoff time and Walter Welborn, they're always tough, buddy, and that hill rocks and rolls in the playoffs, buddy. You got that right. This next one, man, Westbrook Christian is traveling to White Plains. This is it's a very interesting game, Caleb, from the standpoint, this has been a weird season for White Plains, a very weird season for them. They started out 0-5, then won 2 straight, then missed the playoffs with an overtime loss to Mumford 2 weeks ago. Last week, they suffered a very bad loss to Jacksonville at 62-0. So, but here's the thing about Jacksonville. They're one of those 7 teams in 4A South that if they was to represent the South and win the state, you'd be like, I could see that coming.
Yeah.
They're in that mix with Hanley, Bibb County, Jackson, the list goes on and on, Andalusia, Catholic. They're in that conversation. I promise you, they're that good of a football team, and we're going to talk about them coming up in our game of the week, actually. But until we get there, let's talk about this game. Westbrook has had an interesting season themselves. Coach Steve Smith came in, and before I start, we're about to do a tour of their athletic facilities with Coach Smith coming up. I'm going to bring Brick Boy and I was going to do a walkthrough, kind of like we did at Oxford. So that's going to be really cool. But it's not just their football or their weight room. We're going to do their entire athletic facilities over there, the upgrades that they have. So that's going to be really interesting to see, and I'm excited about doing that. But anyways, Westbrook started the season out 3-2. They went 1-3 over the last four, though. Unfortunately, the region they're in is a very tough region, though. It's not an easy region at all. So they have had some promising moments this year, and I think their future is going to be very bright. And I think you can attest to that. We've seen those moments from them this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's just when you see the magic that Steve Smith brings to a program, we've seen it time and time again when he was at Piedmont, where they just found ways to win. It didn't matter. It was just he closed quarters so strong, and he started the first 5 minutes of half so strong, and that's the things that Westbrook's learning now, and they're learning weight room stuff. They're learning, just the grit that those Piedmont teams play with, and those teams that he had at Cedar Bluff played with. Westbrook's learning that, and it's coming. The future's super bright. And when you flip the thing over and look at White Plains, man, when they took the forfeit at Anniston, and they basically were eliminated from playoffs. They did the appeal and won that, and then they had these high hopes for the playoffs, and that loss, with that overtime loss, the playoffs were evaporated. I think that's why we seen that 62-0 loss to Jacksonville last week. But for both of these teams, you want to go out on a positive note. You said that best earlier. You want to end the season on a winning note so you can have some momentum heading to the offseason. So I look for both of those teams to really get after each other in that game. This next game is Sardis, who is 5-4, 1-4 in region play, has now been eliminated from the playoffs, is traveling to the Woodshed at Hopes Bluff. Hopes Bluff is one of those teams you and I have talked about quietly having a really good football season. The interesting thing about Hopes Bluff is, man, they just quietly have a good, solid football team.
Yeah.
It's not like a lot of flash, which is good. I mean, they just line up. They do the small things really good. And talking to BJ Brooks this week on his show, and before we started filming, he just said the one thing he told his kids about Hopes Bluff is it don't matter if Hopes Bluff's winning by 30. If they're down, it don't matter. They play hard for Coach Rob. And he said, that's my challenge to my guys to end this season on this note. Can we play as hard as Hopes Bluff kids are going to play for Coach Rob? So, and I agreed with him. I said, yeah, you're right about that. They do. And that's a tough place to win a football game. If you don't believe me, ask Geraldine, ask Sylvania. Both of those were very close games when they played Hopes Bluff. So I'm going to tell you this. Sardis seniors and this Sardis bunch have won more games this season than they have their previous three combined. So that's a shout out to them, and they can end this season on a 6-4 note. Think about that. They can end this season on a 6-4 note, and that's how you build a foundation moving forward, in my opinion. So those seniors are going to look to go out with another win right here. But it's going to be tough to get it against Hopes Bluff, and Hopes Bluff's actually favored in this one. So this next game, Caleb's going to be Sylacauga is traveling to Piedmont. These two teams are on two different what is that word? Trajectories. Anyways, they're two different directions they're going. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Sylacauga, they had some expectations coming in when they hired their new coach this year. They did end their 20-game losing streak. That's a positive. The not so positive is they're 1-8 on the season. And Piedmont, kind of a role reversal. Piedmont started the season 1-4 and has gone 3-1 over the last four. But the biggest win by far and away for Piedmont was the one last week where they beat Hopes Bluff 22-21, which secured the third seed in the playoffs right there for them. And they will be traveling to JB Pennington in the first round. That's a tough game for Piedmont, but Piedmont, I mean, I know their kids. They don't fear anybody. I mean, they've been in this situation before. The year they won it, I believe, 2 years ago, due to tiebreakers, they won it from a 3 seed in the playoffs. I'm almost positive about that. I think it was the Jack's junior year. I'm almost positive they was the 3rd seed due to tiebreakers in those playoffs and went and won a state championship. So you can't. There's no price tag you can put on kids who's been there and done that before. You can't put that on there. There's no price tag you can put on teams who's been there in the playoffs and performed like they have over these years. It's immeasurable. So when playoff times roll around, I look for Piedmont to play their best football in these next couple of weeks, this week, and over into that first round playoffs against JV Pennington. So it's going to be interesting to see how this season transpires for them, because this Sylacauga team, they've got a lot of talent. They'll give them a pretty good look before they head into these playoffs. So I know, they're going to be. Coach Miller's going to have his guys focused on this game with a big one looming next week.
Mortimer Jordan, they travel to Fultondale. For Mortimer Jordan, it's been a really solid year for them. They kind of surprised everybody by beating Leeds to start the season, and then had a good win over Springville. Their only 2 losses on the year. They're 7-2, 4-2. Their only 2 losses are 62-28 to Parker, which, that one got away from them, but it's Parker. And then 54-14 to Mountain Brook here recently, and it's Mountain Brook. I mean, they're combined 16-3 this season. Outside of that, Mortimer Jordan's outscored everybody else 299-118, and they're going to be traveling to Fort Payne in the playoffs. So it'll be a game a lot of people around Fort Payne need to be watching, need to be tuned into, and need to be checking out to keep up with Mortimer Jordan. I'm telling you, it's a dangerous team that is going to be coming to Fort Payne next week. They're coming from a really, really challenging region where they get to face some pretty good teams. And, the positives you look at if you're Fort Payne is they've given up 62 and 54 in their 2 losses. So if you can get the offense going, you can give them some problems. But it's going to be a good team coming in for Fultondale. They started the year 1-4. Their only win was over Etowah. That big time win over Etowah that really kind of shocked a lot of us at the time. But since then, they've gone 3-1. Only losses 35-0 to Cherokee County, which, same with talked about Locust Fork earlier. How many times we said, hey, they lost Cherokee County. So, it's been a good year, I think, for Fultondale. You got to give them a lot of credit and what they've been able to do and starting as rough as they did and then now finishing like they have. They got their work cut out for them as they're going to travel to Deschler next week in the first round of the playoffs. But this should be a good test for them here with Mortimer Jordan to get them ready for that heading into next week. Benjamin Russell, they travel down to Valley. They won the region last week with a win over Helena, a very good win. They kind of stifled Jordan Washington for the most part in that ball game. The running back for Helena, who you've heard me and Bo talk about him countless times, and they defended him really well, and they just found a way to score enough points and win the football game. And they figured out.
Huge win.
Yeah, no, it was a huge win, and they've kind of figured some things out. They started the year 2-2. They lost to Central Clay early in the year, which was a very disappointing loss for them and really for the community and the expectations that they had there. It's turned out it's really not that bad of a loss now when you look at what Central Clay has done, but you just expect a little more, especially after they had beaten them a year ago. And then their only other loss was Homewood in the 4th game of the year, and they just kind of didn't show up for that game. It was a weird game. They got beat 41-20. Since then, they've won 5 straight now. They've really gotten going. They beat undefeated Helena 2017 last week. And it was their first region championship since 2013. So big there for that program. Smitty Grider in year 2. Some people said that they couldn't win at Benjamin Russell anymore, and he's found a way to win here over the last 2 weeks and has done a really good job. So credit to him. But you look at Valley on the other side, Bo. Early in the year, I remember we were talking about Hanley, and you kind of said, "Wow, they're playing Valley," and I was like, "Hey, watch out for Valley now. I mean, they're not going to be bad." They played Hanley extremely well. Their only blowout loss in the year is 47-0 to Central Clay, which. Yeah, Central Clay. So they outscored everybody else 318-82, and they're on a 3-game winning streak. They beat Tallahassee 48-14. They outscored Elmore County 41-40, which was good to see they could do that. Elmore County team that can put up points, and they're 7-2 as well, and have had a good year. And then they beat Carroll, who beat Charles Henderson earlier this year as well, and has had a pretty decent year. They beat them 27-21 last week. So they don't know who they play next week. They will host as a 2 seed, and will be very interesting. You know, they're waiting on everything to kind of shake out with that Gulf Shores deal that's going on, and UMS having to win this week to get in, and all that to kind of find out who they'll end up playing next week and hosting as the 2 seed next week. But it should be an interesting game. You know, Benjamin Russell won this one 48-7 last year. But now they have to go to Valley, and I think Valley's a little bit better and in a little bit better spot as a program than they were a season ago when they had to go to Benjamin Russell. We just talked about Gulf Shores. Well, here they are. They're going to be playing at BC Rain on Friday night, a chance to get to 10-0, 8-0 in the region for them, which would be a fantastic year. It's going to be really interesting to see how they handle all the noise that's around them, Bo. You know, I mean, it's kind of like Michigan right now. You hear people talking about with Michigan in college football and what they're going through, because it's not only this cheating scandal. You know, there's an FBI investigation into one of their offense coordinator or former coach or something hacking into other people's computer. I mean, they got a lot of stuff going on, and it's kind of similar here for Gulf Shores. There's a lot of different things that are going on, and they've been in the news. They've got a lot of attention, and these are high school kids. You know, I mean, they can try to act like it doesn't bother them all they want, but it's definitely going to be something that's talked about in the hallways. It's going to be talked about at practice, and just how much can that catch up to you over time. We're going to find out here soon. You know, we've done with our Saturday show each week. We talked to Corey, and BC Rain's been a team that we've brought up. Hey, BC Rain seems to be having a good year this year. And Corey said, yeah, they got a good group and a team that can score some points. And, you know, you look at their 2 losses. They're 7-2, 5-2, 26-18 to Viger, who is extremely good and had to forfeit some games due to investigation early in the year. And then 29-21 to Faith, who also is very good. And that was game 3. Since then, BC Rain has won 6 straight by a combined 209-79. And having to wait on their seeding for Gulf Shores, you know, and all that and what's going to happen. But they are in the postseason. And so it'll be interesting to see how all that shakes out. And, hey, big opportunity here if you're BC Rain to get a win. And while everybody's talking about Gulf Shores, your name could be in that mix a lot due to the fact that you could beat them this week. So that should be a really fun game. You know, Gulf Shores is favored by 15. But, again, BC Rain played Viger and Faith extremely well. And so it'll be really interesting to see, you know, how they handle this Gulf Shores team and just if everything starts catching up with them a little bit from a mentality standpoint.
Has there been any updates on the Gulf Shore thing?
No, I
There's
saw they
been
put out another deal yesterday talking about it a little bit, but there's been, I mean, the AHSAA is just still investigating. And, you know, I mean, if you remember last year, Saraland ended up getting cleared, but it wasn't until after they were 2 weeks in, you know, they won 2 playoff games by the time they got cleared, or we could have had chaos last year. So it'd be a shame if we go 2 weeks into it this year and then they rule Gulf Shores as ineligible and it shakes up everything in 5A.
you know, go ahead. Well, you know, today I actually talked to Alvin Briggs, and I told him, I said, man, you've been a busy man, you know, recently. You could just see it, you know, Alvin looked like, you know, he's there at the play, you know, the state tournament in volleyball today, and you could just tell, I mean, he looks like he's working, you know, 50, 60-hour weeks, you know, and he probably is with everything going on from tournaments to, you know, super regionals to state. And then now we're preparing for the football playoffs. And man, it's just, I couldn't imagine being in his shoes and some of the other people's shoes at the AHSAA with everything coming at them a million miles an hour. And then you still kind of go to work at these events and, you know, put on your happy faces. So, yeah, it's interesting to see how that pans out, you know, because, you know, just it's incredible. The high school kids, like you said, how do they deal with it? That's going to be the key to that game and really to their whole season. I mean, if they deal with it negative, it could go south. If they deal with it positive and let it unite them, it could be a positive to springboard them all the way to the state because they have the talent to do it. The next game is going to be Lee of Huntsville, who's 5-4, 2-3 in region play, is going to be traveling over to Boaz, Alabama, who's 4-5, 2-3 in region play. But with last week's victory, they clinched the playoff game. You know, in the last 2 weeks, Caleb, here's an interesting stat about Boaz. Not week before last, they were tied 21 with Sardis and went on a run to win that game. Last week, they were tied 21 with Douglas and went on a run to win that game. Each time they didn't give up a single point from that time on, and with last week's victory, clinched the playoff berth. And I called Coach Sullivan and had him come on with us on the final drive. And honestly, man, you could just hear in his voice. If you know Coach Sullivan, he's a very humble guy. He's a very soft-spoken guy. really nice. But I told him, I said, Coach, I know you don't like to brag, but could you please explain how much these coaches mean to you, so to speak, and having these. I think he's got 3 head coaches on his staff. Shay Monroe being one of them, Coach Waldrop being another one. But I told him just talk about these staff, brag on the staff, and he's like, man, I honestly think I got the best staff in the state. He's like, these guys, coach their guts out for me and these kids, and they really do a really good job, and it shows because Caleb, if you remember, they started the season 2-5.
Mm-hmm.
And now here they are going over into the playoffs. I mean, some of their losses earlier in this season was to monstrous teams, Gunnersville, Scottsboro, teams like that. But Leah Huntsville's a dangerous opponent. If you remember, they beat Fort Payne earlier this season. Now, unfortunately, they're not going to the playoffs, but do they handle it? Are they ready to grab the basketballs and go play basketball, or do they want to show up and try to go out winners? Here's going to be the question for them. That's a question that has to be answered, and we will find out Friday. But that's a tough, dangerous game for Boaz and Lee Huntsville. We'll know which Lee Huntsville shows up because Boaz can score the ball. There ain't no doubt about that. They've scored a lot of points this season, so Lee Huntsville's going to have to show up and play hard to beat those guys. This next game is another game not from this region, but again, Caleb and I like talking about teams. So that way, when the playoffs get here, everybody goes, hey, where'd they come from? Or who are those guys? But I think everybody knows one of these two teams for sure, and that is Saraland. They're undefeated, 9-0. They're traveling to McGill-Tulane, who's 5-4, 4-3 on the season in region play. And look, this is a simple game to look at from the standpoint. Saraland wants to be the best team in the state, 1 through 7A. I think you agree with that.
No, yeah, I mean they've said that they want to go undefeated. They want to.
Yep.
They want everybody to think of them as the best team in the state.
And I'm going to tell you something. I was on the phone with Antoine Fagan Sr. today on our way to the volleyball championship, Brick Boy and I talked to him, and he said, hey, they may be the best team in the state. And this is coming from, Fagan Sr. He said they got the talent to be, and if they went out, they may be deemed that. Caleb, they're averaging 52.6 points per game and only allowing 11.7. And we talked about Locust Fork with that kind of dominance. But here's the difference. These guys are playing in a very, very tough 6A region.
Yeah.
So that's something to behold there. And McGill-Tulane's going to play these guys with their hair on fire. And they're from that O'Shell Road right there with St. Paul's and UMS Wright. They're right down the road from the 3 of them. So the talent's going to be there. They haven't put it together this year. Saraland's is 38-point favorite in this game. And I know they want to get in there and take care of business and move on. That's their goal in this game. Next game is going to be Central Clay. Danny Horn. You ever heard that name, Caleb?
Maybe just a time or two.
Time or two. You've probably heard him scream at you a time or two, I'm sure.
Yeah.
When you played for him.
I had a couple personal foul penalties where he got
gee. I'm sure that was interesting.
Yeah, now they're interesting.
They're going to be traveling over to Wetumpka. The line on this game is 19. Central Clay has outscored their opponents 372-66 on the season. 2 shutouts. Caleb, they are averaging 41.3 points a game scored and only allowing 7.3 points a game. They beat Benjamin Russell, who's in 6A. They beat Russell County and already by a combined 60-27. They will host next week. And Caleb, guess who they may host? If UMS Wright can win this week, they will host UMS Wright. So you're talking about Terry Curtis.
Yeah, 2 winning coaches in AHSAA history.
Yep. From a overall wins standpoint, and they're both tied with, I believe, Stacy Luker for the most championships ever with 8 apiece. So you're looking at roughly 700 wins and 16 state championships between those 2 coaches that will be on those sidelines if UMS can handle business this week and win.
That you're looking at over 150 playoff wins. I sent you those records.
Yes.
They've done 81 for Terry Curtis, 75 for Danny Horn. So you're talking about 156 playoff wins combined that could be meeting in round number 1.
Caleb, what's really weird about that? I mean, think about this, Caleb. If you win the state championship, you only get 5 wins that season. And you just said these two gentlemen have 150 combined playoff wins.
Yeah.
That is incredible. I mean, think about that. So 370 or 700 victories between the two of them, 16 state championships, and 150 playoff wins.
Well, and then think about, if you take their state, they've won 8. So if you take their state champion, that's 40 of their wins is during state championship years. That means even in years they haven't won it, Coach Horns won 35 and Terry Curtis won 41. In other years where they didn't even go on and win the state championship. So, it's two guys that know how to get it done when November rolls around.
That's what you call getting it done when it counts, my friend. That's incredible. Well, we're supposed to be unbiased here, but I'm kind of going to be biased. I want to see them two coach against each other.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, I want to see it.
As a fan, you want that playoff matchup.
As a fan of high school football in Alabama, you want to see that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be the media coverage at that game would be unbelievable. Caleb, I'm going to let you knock these next two, and I'll be right back.
Russellville, they'll be traveling to Athens. Russellville, they'll be traveling to Athens. Should be a very intriguing game up in that Huntsville area up there. Russell's only loss this year, 27-24 to Mars Hill, who, right now Mars Hill Mobile Christian's kind of on a collision course in 3A. It's up to other people to do something about it and really knock them off. And big win for Mars Hill over a really good 5A Russellville team who has outscored everybody else this year, 351 to 86. So it's been a Russellville team who has played extremely well at times this year, and they're going to get Fairfield in the first round next week and get to host them. If you hadn't been to Russellville, if you're ever going through that area, stop by, check out their football field, check out their baseball field. If you get a chance to go into their baseball facilities, they're incredible. There's colleges in the state that would love to have what they have. I'm talking about an indoor hitting facility that's underneath their bleachers, the locker rooms under the bleachers, and they've got a great looking stands. And the baseball, I don't know if a baseball field is better than what Russellville has up there, and their football field is just as nice too. So if you get a chance, go by, stop by there. Athens, another place. They've got an incredible baseball stadium. They've got a jumbotron that they put stuff on and stuff. They do it like a college game with the players' pictures and things like that up there. And they do it the right way. And it's a special place, and they've got some great facilities. Obviously, Philip Rivers came from there as well and then played in Athens. So, they've won a lot of games. And you look at Athens this year, their only 2 losses are to Muscle Shoals and Hartselle. Everybody else, they've outscored them 309 to 155. So it's a very, very good Athens team. This should be a very fun football game, and a big one for both of them. For Russellville, getting ready for these 5A playoffs, and chance where you possibly run into, a Pleasant Grove or a Ramsey or a John Carroll or somebody like that who seems to be dangerous in 5A North. And then for Athens, getting geared up for big playoff opportunity on their side as well. As they got to go to Oxford next week, and that should be a very fun game between Athens and Oxford at Oxford next Friday. And if you're looking for somewhere to go, that's one I would suggest. Athens and Oxford would be a fun one. So for Athens, getting geared up for a big 6A run, and they're going to have their work cut out for them, Bo, getting things started with Oxford next week. Decatur at Scottsboro. Decatur started the year 1-3. They then won 2 games in a row over Hazel Green and Columbia to get to 3-3. Then they lost 3 straight, but against 3 pretty good teams: Muscle Shoals, Hartselle, and Buckhorn here to end the year. So they did not get into the playoffs, which is not really normal at Decatur. But, it's a place that's going to go through ups and downs and years where they're good, not good, things like that. So this is just one of those rough years there for Decatur. It means here in a couple of years, they're probably due to be pretty dang good one year. So be watching out for them here in the future. You look at Scottsboro, they started out the year 5-0. They were scoring points on everybody. We were kind of wondering if they were going to be able to run the table. They've hit a little bit of a skid here over the last little bit, but they've lost 2 pretty good teams, Guntersville and Mars Hill, who we just talked about. They beat Sardis and Douglas over this 2-2 stretch they've had over the last 4. They're in a 3-way tie with Guntersville and Arab, so winning Friday is important for them in their non-region and tiebreakers and things like that between Guntersville, Arab, and themselves. So it's kind of a must-win game here for Scottsboro, just due to putting you want to put yourself in the best position possible, and by losing this non-region game, it doesn't help you at all because you're going to talk about Guntersville here in a second. More than likely, they're going to win on Friday night, and so they're going to have won all their non-region games, and so Scottsboro has a chance to do the same thing here. And they already lost to Mars Hill, and so they're going to be kind of counting on some things. So you need to win and put yourself in a good position to have an opportunity to be able to host in the first round, and good opportunity to finish the year on a good note, finish the regular season against Decatur, be 8-2, and really have some momentum. Maybe kind of find yourself offensively again. You know, they hadn't been scoring as many points here in the end of the year as they were scoring at the beginning. So maybe a chance to really find yourselves offensively and kind of get things going as we get ready for the playoffs next week.
You're right, man. And yeah, Scottsboro, man, they need this one. And then the way they lost last week was very, very bad. I don't know if you've seen that, Caleb. That was a tough way to lose last week. Yeah, Marcel scored late and went for 2 in the win instead of the tie.
Wow.
You know, kudos to Daryl Higgins for having the guts to do that. But I'm sure Daryl Higgins looked at it with, what do I have to lose? I'm playing a team that's, 2 classes ahead of me. They're a really good football team.
Mm-hmm.
And here's our shot. Let's go ahead and take it instead of rolling over into overtime and having to stop their triple option. So I don't blame him one bit. And the gamble paid off for him. So, yeah, Scottsboro definitely needs it.
35 was the final, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
That's correct. Those Gunnersville Wildcats you just talked about, we're about to talk about them. They're about to have a inter-county rivalry game versus Albertville. Albertville, Caleb, we had them on earlier this year, keeping up with Marshall County athletics, and had a loss of a teammate, unfortunately, earlier this year that's really put a black cloud over a season that it's not been a good season for Albertville football.
But he was one of their better players too.
He was one of their better players. That's correct.
And it's not, not trying to make it like that's bigger than anything, but when you're already not a great team and then you lose one of your better players, especially up front, I mean, that hurts you a little bit. And I think that you've seen that with them this year.
Yeah, and sometimes a lot of things is bigger than football.
Yeah,
that. That's one of those cases. It's just one of those rough seasons for Albertville. They got a beautiful school, beautiful campus up there. It's just going to take some time to turn that thing around. We've talked about that with many programs, and
they need to be how they got, because I like him.
Yeah,
I think he's going to do.
Oh yeah, yes, I agree. And Gunnersville, it looked like a couple of weeks ago, it looked like they were just on the easy streak, going to win the region, and then ARAB, just come in and shock the state with that victory over them, and it's kicked them into this 3-way tie. Here's the interesting thing about this game right here. Even if they win, they're not going to get any points for the 3-way tie, the first tiebreaker. But they did defeat Southside earlier this year. That gave them, I believe, 7 points and a chance for 8. If they beat Etowah, so that's huge for them. So they're, Gunnersville is a really good team. They had a bad night against ARAB, but they're still a really good, dangerous football team. And the line on this one's 36. And here's my question, Caleb. Bounce back wise, what did they do last week in a bounce back game, so to speak, versus Sardis? Well, they went out and won it 55-0 versus a pretty good Sardis team. So I think there was not much of this woe with me, our heads down. I think it did the opposite. It focused them up. It brought them together, and they came out and performed not only with a victory, but a shutout victory over a good Sardis team, 55-0.
Yeah, I think if you're the rest of the state in 5A, you need to be upset that ARAB beat Gunnersville, because I think it woke this team up a little bit. We going into that week, and they tried to act humble and stuff, but I think you could tell they were feeling themselves a little bit and were getting confident in what they could go do. And then I think ARAB brought them back down to earth, and it just kind of woke them up and refocused them and showed them, hey, we still got things to work on. And you give Coach Reese and his group a chance to get guys locked in on them, and it's going to be dangerous, I think, for the rest of the state, because I think this isn't your Gunnersville team from the past. I think they can keep up with you speed wise, and they can hurt you in some other ways that they couldn't in the past.
Especially when they're healthy, and they are healthy now. They've got everybody back. Here's the X factor, Caleb. I think they're one of the teams in 5A North outside of Birmingham that can make a run, a legitimate run.
No doubt. I agree with you. And like I was saying, I mean, losing ARAB, all it did was refocus them and show, they're going to have their attention now each and every week, which is going to make that team a dangerous team. But that's going to do it for us on our regular games this week. And we're now going to kick things over to our Watkins Heating and Cooling Games of the Week. We want to thank Brad Watkins from Watkins Heating and Cooling for being a part of what we do here each and every week with Average Joe's Sports Talk and sponsoring these 5 games, the games of the week, the biggest games. And these are going to be some big ones right here, Bo, that we're about to get into talking about with these teams. But again, thank you to Brad Watkins. Hey, look, we've been talking about it. It's coming. Well, it's here now. It's supposed to be 29 degrees here in Calera tonight. It was 31 tonight. It got up to like 68 today. So it's that time of year where, we had the heat on at night, and then once the day kind of got going at 12, we had to flip our cool on, and so your heating and cooling unit's going to be doing a lot of different work. You need to make sure that you've got it in tip-top shape, ready to go. And if you're in that northeast part of the state, around Fife and Plainview and Fort Payne and all that area up there, make sure to check out Watkins Heating and Cooling. And great guy, great business. And again, supporting high school athletics here with us. Make sure you support all these businesses that we bring up, because we wouldn't be here to bring you these shows each and every week without the support of people like Brad Watkins, Pink Houses, the Henry House, Rojo Go, Wenzel's, all these different places that we talk about each and every week. So, Bo, time to get into our games of the week this week, and a huge one on Thursday night. I like that this game's on Thursday just because it gives people a chance to go to some good games Thursday, go to some good games Friday. And these two teams, I think, are about to beat each other up a little bit to where they need that one extra day going into the playoffs next week. Fife will be traveling to Sylvania. Huge football game here between, Fife played Geraldine earlier in the year, and then obviously played Pisgah because they're in the region. Sylvania, played Pisgah earlier in the year, and then they played Geraldine because they're in the region, and then now you have these two teams playing against each other. I think you've really kind of got the best 4 teams up in that area have kind of all played each other this year with Fife, Pisgah, Geraldine, and Sylvania.
Yeah, it's kind of a round robin tournament, so to speak. And they've all beaten each other. There's no clear cut winner, it looks like, through this, what we've seen so far. And this will make that picture a little more clear. But, Caleb, when you talk about this game and it's moved to Thursday, kudos to both teams for doing that, because I think not only does both teams respect one another, but I think both teams want to get healthy and get ready for those playoffs, and an extra day of preparation can obviously do that. So for those two teams in DeKalb County to come together and move this game to Thursday, kudos to them. And Watkins Heating and Cooling, our guys, man. You got to give those guys props, man. Brad Watkins is our dude. He is a Fife guy. I'm just going to go ahead and call him a Fife guy. We can call him a homer, whatever you want. So I know he's really interested in this breakdown. And let's break it down, Caleb. Here we go. Last week, Coach Paul Benefield got his 300th win at Fife High School. So only him and Buddy Anderson have 300 wins at one location. Obviously, Coach Benefield has more than 300 wins, but we're talking about at a single school.
That's cool.
So
he got his 300 at Fife last week, and Coach Horn got his 350th overall, in the same week.
That's right. Very cool.
For people that don't know, they're pretty good friends with each other, and so that's cool.
Absolutely.
Hear that, in the same.
About each time you talk to one, they'll always ask about the other.
Yeah.
You talk to Paul, Coach Benefield, or he'll call him Paul. Have you talked to Paul lately? Or Coach Benefield will say, hey, you talk to Coach Horn lately. So very mutual respect between those two guys. And it's cool that you mentioned that, Caleb, because there's a lot of mutual respect between these two men fixing to take the field, Coach Van and Coach Benefield. Coach Van, actually, and you can ask my wife this, and she went up there with me to Sylvania to drop off a Player of the Week ball earlier this year. And Coach Van walked us through the hallways and showed us the pictures of Coach Benefield. And he was like, here's the 12-1 team of Coach Benefield. Here's the 12-1 team of Coach Benefield. He embraces that. He loves it. And if you've seen our preseason photos of the Marshall County Media Day, they got each other in a headlock. So they love each other, like from the standpoint of respect, but very similar styles. Both of them play really good defense. Both of them have big physical offensive lines, and both of them really get after you for 4 quarters from top to bottom. There is not a lot of weakness in either one of these two teams' games, and they're very similar. So I look for a physical team, the team who does not commit the penalties and does not put the ball on the ground will win this game. And Caleb, I'm just going to tell you like this: neither one of these teams put the ball on the ground that much. So I look for this to be a very close game.
It should be a fun one up there. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, and you would love to take all the transitive properties everybody likes to try to take and say, oh, well, Fife lost to Geraldine and Sylvania beat Geraldine, so that means that Sylvania will win this game. But you can't really do that because then Fife ended up beating Pisgah and Sylvania lost to Pisgah early in the year.
Yeah.
Come out earlier, so I mean, it's just it's going to be a really interesting game, and I think it'll be fun to see how physical it is and stuff. But here, you risk this like when I was in school, my junior year, we played Homewood in 10th game of the year. Homewood was number 2 in 5A. We were number 3 in 5A. And we beat each. I mean, people from Homewood, Coach Bergeson that we met and talked to, he'll tell you we beat each other up so much. Homewood was so beat up they went on the road the next week and lost to a 4 seed in Greenville, who nobody expected to lose. And they had 6-7 guys out from our game with playing against each other. We had a couple guys that we lost a linebacker in the game, lost a couple other guys that ended up hurting us later on in the playoffs, but. That's what you have to watch for in a game like this because both these teams want to get after each other so much, but you don't want to lose anybody as you get ready for this playoff run that both these teams are very capable of going on. I mean, these are two teams that are very capable of being there at the end of the season. And so it'll be interesting just to kind of see how all that goes. And you hope for both sides. I mean, this is for every team out there, but you hope for both sides that they can come out healthy and that they don't look back at this going, maybe we shouldn't have scheduled that tough game because we like seeing these tough games at the end of the year.
Hey, Caleb, another X factor is the battle of the Andersons, the cousins.
Yeah.
Zach and Logan. Now, I will say this. I do like Logan's hair, the curly hair, but Zach's got one of the best. I don't know if it's a mullet, what it is, but it's the long. He's got the long flowing locks, man. I have to give the battle of the hair to Zach. He's got a little bit better hair than Logan. Not taking shots at Logan, but the battle of the Andersons is going to be fun to watch as well.
Man, what if both of them go out there and run for 360 like we saw?
I mean, Zach. I mean, both of them can take it to the house at any time. I mean, I've seen them both do it multiple times. I think a game. I don't know if you know. You obviously went with me. Who was with me? Noah, maybe. When Zach took it to the house in the opening kickoff versus Geraldine, it's just both of them's electric players and fun to watch. But that'll be another X factor in that game. I'm looking forward to seeing.
Another big one that'll be taking place up around Huntsville, Madison Academy at Westminster Christian. This is a big football game up there for folks that don't know. Madison Academy 9-0, 6-0 in the region. Westminster Christian, they're 8-1, 7-0. And my brother who coaches at Hazel Green told me had Westminster's quarterback not gotten hurt in the first, he got hurt when they had to lead against Lee of Huntsville. They had to bring in the backup, and then after that, now he doesn't play defense, so they still could have stopped Lee of Huntsville at any moment. But Lee Huntsville comes back, wins the game 44-34. I'm sure losing your quarterback, not knowing what was going to happen to him, maybe affected them a little bit. After that, they've gone on an 8-game win streak. You could have 2 undefeated teams really playing against each other in this game. Madison Academy is a 10-point favorite, and in large part that's due to the defense they've played this year. They're scoring 53.6 points per game, and they're allowing 8.8. They scored 49 or more for 6 straight games, and they've only allowed 33 points total in that same time span that they have scored 49 or more in 6 straight games. So that's over 300 points, and then they've only given up 33 total during that 6-game span. The best team that's played them best this year is who Piedmont will be playing next week. J.B. Pennington played them to a 26-21 game that Madison Academy was able to win. And actually, I'm sorry, that Madison Academy will be playing Hoax Bluff next week in the first round of the playoffs. So going to be a very, very tough game there for Hoax Bluff. They're going to have their work cut out for them, but should be a fun one there. And then you look at Westminster Christian. I talked about them. They lost early in the year. They've outscored everybody since that game that they got beat 417 to 229 over these last 8 games. And so they give up a little bit more than some teams that are dominant, but they score a ton of points. And when you're scoring 417, you're in a good spot. They host Oak Grove next week. I had Oak Grove on the AHSAA TV game of the week this past week. Not a bad team, but it's going to be tough for them to keep up. I mean, Dora's, I think, kind of very similar to what Westminster Christian is, and it was tough for Oak Grove to keep up with Dora's speed and athleticism. And I think they're going to be in the same boat with Westminster Christian, and that could be a fun. If Dora and Westminster Christian end up playing, second, third round, that could be a lot of fun to see those two teams out there together. So that should be a very big game, and another one where you kind of hope these two teams just don't beat up on each other too much heading into the postseason.
Caleb, you talked about Madison Academy only giving up 8.8 points a game. Well, I'm going to tell you that quarterback you're talking about is Brandon Mush, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Listen to these stats on the year. Your brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was talking about how good he is. Well, let me
said in his opinion he might be the best quarterback.
Well, when you hear what I'm about to tell you, you may jump on board with that. Listen to this. On the season, that man has 1,344 yards passing, all right, with 22 touchdowns. This is what he's got on the ground: 1,500 yards rushing and 24 touchdowns on the ground.
Wow.
So he has a combined 46 touchdowns, and he does it with his legs and his feet equally. Almost 1,500 yards passing, 1,500 yards rushing. So how do you defend a guy like that? This is going to test that Madison Academy defense. And if you're Hope's Bluff and you're sitting back waiting in the wings, you're sitting here thinking, yeah, we got a tough game versus Sardis, but I hope they go into overtime and they, you're like, I want them to go after each other and knock each other around and bang each other up, because Hope's Bluff don't play that style of football, and you're going to want Madison Academy to give all their effort and empty their bag of tricks so you can see it all on film when you prepare for them next week. That will be an interesting football game. And look, Caleb, if you're the price you're going to pay for the ticket to go watch that game, you're going to get your money's worth just from watching Madison Academy's defense and Westminster Christian's offense, namely Brandon Mush at quarterback.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's going to be a very fun football game. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that one goes and talking about that on Saturday morning.
Yeah, that Fort Payne one. Go ahead, kick it off. I got something to say about that one too.
Fort Payne's traveling to Cherokee County. Another one of our games of the week. Look, they got Cherokee County as a 20-point favorite according to AHSAA, but I think some of that's just due to the fact they probably don't trust Fort Payne's defense a ton. But I think it's a good test for both sides. Fort Payne, can you go score on a defense that outside? I mean, if you take away their closest game, which is 49-21, yes, 28-point win is the closest game Cherokee County has had this year. If you take those 21 points away, they've only given up 38 all season in the other 8 games. So there's the Fort Payne offense that scored a ton of points this year. I think it's a good test for both of them. Fort Payne, go test your offense. Hey, can we go score on a team like this? Can we go put up some points, build some confidence? And yeah, you're a 6A playing a 4A, but this ain't just not your typical 4A right here. No. So this is a great test, I think, for Fort Payne to get ready for the playoffs and to get ready for, we talked about this team earlier, Mortimer Jordan, who has had a great year this year, might be 8-2 going into the postseason, can play, not great on defense. So if you can score on this defense, you ought to be able to score on Mortimer Jordan and really be able to build up some confidence. So on the other side of Cherokee County, if you can stop this offense, you got to feel like going in the playoffs, you can stop anybody, so for them, I think it could be a very big confidence booster on their side as well. You look at it for Fort Payne, defense is going to be the key. They've given up 196 in their 4 losses this year. That's almost 50 points a game in their 4 losses. In the other 5 that they've won, they've only given up 82 total in those 5. So 82 in the 5 wins, 196 in the 4 losses this year. If they can put it together defensively and get some stops and be able to move the ball offensively, you could see a big upset here for Fort Payne. And it's crazy to say it's an upset, but I mean, in my opinion, that's what it would be an upset here if Fort Payne can beat Cherokee County. Yeah,
now this is hilarious. You're going to die laughing when you hear this. So Coach Elmore was on the final drive 2 weeks ago, and we mentioned this game. He's one of those guys that don't look ahead, but he said, I wonder what idiot scheduled that game. He's like, I'd like to have a talk with him. And I said, yeah, when you pass by the mirror tomorrow morning, you can have a long talk with yourself. But no, seriously, though, who else would you want to play if you're going to playoffs? When you get in the playoffs, teams that win is teams that take care of the ball, generally run it very well, and play good defense. Well, Cherokee County checks the box in all of those. So if Fort Payne and Coach Elmore's preparing for the playoffs, like I know they are, this is exactly who you want to play. Now, it's one of those things, Caleb, is rolling the dice like we're at Vegas. You don't want nobody hurt. You want to get out of here healthy, and you want to perform well. And you do that with a quarterback like Varnador, who has 2,435 passing yards on the season, 21 touchdowns, Caleb, to only 2 picks. That's taking care of the football, especially as many times as he puts it in the air. He's having a fantastic season. But when you flip it over at Cherokee County, it's no mystery who their go-to guy is, who's their dude. It's Jacob Cornejo. Listen to this, Caleb. He's averaging 10 yards per rush. So let's turn and hand him the ball, and let's go line up at 1st and 10 again. Let's turn and hand him the ball, and we'll line up at 1st and 10 again on average. That's what the man averages. 10 yards a carry. He's averaging 207 yards a game on the ground, and he's crossed the goal line 22 times rushing. He's got 22 rushing touchdowns on the season. And Caleb, you know as well as I know how many full games has he missed because he don't even take a snap hardly in the second half.
Yeah.
He's sitting on the sidelines in a lot of these blowout victories. So when you see him play a 4-quarter game like he did against Aniana, the man had 400 yards rushing. So if they get pressed and they roll over into some 4-quarter game, whether it be Fort Payne or whoever it is, imagine what kind of season stats he would have if he was having to do that each and every week, but he does not have to. He's having an outstanding season, and they're playing such a good defense that he gets to go and rest, which is exactly what you want, because last year, if you remember, he had 1,500 yards rushing in the playoffs alone.
Yeah.
In 5 games, he had 1,500 yards rushing. So think about that. I look for a very good game. 2 great coaches, and Coach Elmore and Coach Kelly. And I know both of these coaches, when scheduling this game, was thinking playoffs.
No, no doubt about it. And there's 2 programs right now that expect to be there at the end of each and every year. Another big game that'll be taking place around Birmingham. Center Point at Leeds. Should be a fun 5A, 6A matchup here with these 2 teams. Center Point, they're 7-2 on the year. They're really 6-3 on the field, but they were granted a forfeit loss to Pell City, which was kind of a surprise loss, and I think they overlooked them a little bit and didn't take them as seriously as they needed to. But their other 2 losses were Clay Chalkville and Oxford. I mean, that's it. So everybody else they've been able to take care of business against this year, and that includes really good Aliceville team. They beat a team out of Mississippi as well. And so they've gone and challenged themselves a little bit. They've outscored everybody else besides Clay Chalkville and Oxford 224 to 115 this year. So, it's not necessarily dominant, but it's outscoring them. It's they've won comfortably. They haven't really had to pull out many tight games with teams that they should be handling really well. And then you look at it for the lead side, it's kind of a surprise start to the year. Nobody thought they'd lose to Mortimer Jordan to start the year, and they lose 31 to 28. But outside of that, they've played extremely well up until they ran into Southside Gadsden. And, Southside played them really, really well, beat them 23 to 13 in that ball game. And I think what really surprised everybody was holding them to 13 points, and it's a good Leeds offense. And Southside played physical. They matched up with them that night. But I think it helped Leeds heading into that Moody game. They had challenged themselves a little bit. They had seen Southside. They go out there, they beat Moody. They block a field goal to win that game, 24 to 21. It's their best win of the year. And it also put them in a position to host Southside wins on Friday night. Locks up them being 1 seed in the region. So, for Leeds, they got to go take care of business and get a win to kind of help with the tiebreaker and everything on their part as well. But, it's just going to be a good football game between 2 teams that are really, gearing up. For Center Point, you got to go to Hartselle in round 1 next week. So, better be ready to go play if you're going to go up to Hartselle. We've seen what they've been able to do last couple of years. And then, for Leeds, you're looking to get a home game, be able to be at your house, and try to go on a run here. And, when you got 2 pass rushers the way that Leeds has, you can go beat anybody in the postseason. So, it'll be really fun to watch and see how things work out for them.
Yeah, Caleb, if you're a player, well, let me rewind the clock. If you're a parent of a player and your son is getting coached by George Bates or Jerry Hood, consider yourself lucky. We're talking about 2 of the classiest, best football coaches in the state of Alabama, albeit at 2 different schools. But man, these are two guys you want to pull for. These are 2 really good humans who happen to be 2 fantastic coaches. What George Bates has done since he's moved up from 5A and had staff literally tell him, "Hey, we're out, bro. We're not winning up there, bro." And he goes and finishes 2nd in the region. It's phenomenal what this man has done at Center Point. And Jerry Hood, and look, deservedly so. Jay Gaines has changed everything at Moody. From top to bottom. And Jake Gaines deserves everything. He's got credit for everything he's done. But he's 0-2 in the biggest game he wants each and every year on the Battle of 411 versus Jerry Hood. That's a testament to Jerry Hood and Jake Gaines, because he's made this game important again. Gaines has. But Jerry Hood is 2-0 versus him. So he shows up in these big games, and his team shows up in these big games. And this is one of those big games, Caleb. This game could go either way. And both of these teams have had some weird losses during the year. but they've also both had big wins. So that game's a pick 'em for a reason. That's
Yeah.
a very tough game for both teams.
Yeah. No, I look forward to talking about that one on Saturday as well.
100%.
Capping that one, it'll be a fun one. Another one
Yes,
that'll
sir.
be a fun one. This is our Watkins Heating and Cooling game of the week. Again, make sure to check out Brad Watkins Heating and Cooling LLC. You can see the phone numbers right there on your screen. That time of year, make sure that they can come out, take care of your heating and cooling unit, and that you're ready to go to deal with the weather that's coming up because it's like I said, it's 29 degrees in Calera here tonight, and it's going to get back up into the 70s by this weekend. So we're going to have heat, cool on. You want to make sure that your unit's ready to go. Make sure to check out Brad Watkins with Watkins Heating and Cooling. And again, we appreciate him sponsoring this each and every week. And our Watkins Heating and Cooling game of the week is the Oxford Yellow Jackets traveling to the Jacksonville Golden Eagles. Going to be a fantastic matchup here, Bo. Two really good football teams, two evenly matched football teams, and two teams that are hungry to really build some momentum and need some momentum heading into the matchups they're going to have next week.
Yeah, this game, Caleb. I'm sorry, I got to say it. This is a battle of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
This is two of the best quarterbacks in North Alabama. I know Jacksonville's in the South in the ASHA area or region play, but they're located very close to each other in the same county. Okay, listen to these stats. Mason Mims on the year for Oxford, who, by the way, has just gotten better and better each week. We've seen him come burst onto the scene last year as a sophomore. This year, he's a junior. Mason Mims, 2,011 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, and oh, by the way, only 2 interceptions. That's taking care of the football. Jim Ogles from Jacksonville, 2,439 passing yards on the season, 35 touchdowns, only 4 picks.
Jeez.
Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that these two guys are the whole team, but both of these guys are the trigger men on two very dangerous offenses. And I think as these two quarterbacks go, this game goes. Coach Smith at Jacksonville is an outstanding football coach. Obviously, what he's done, he's in the playoffs, state championship game just a few years back when Ron Wiggins was there, and actually scored first in that game, but ultimately ended up losing to UMS Wright and Terry Curtis. We know Sam Adams. He's been a very good coach everywhere he's went. He had 26 guys graduate the year he took over at Oxford, and then I think another 12 transfer out. So we're talking a loss of over 30 football players, and he still went and won the region that year after. And now they have a $20+ million brand new state of the art facility. If you're going to beat Oxford, you better do it now because this thing is fisting to go nuclear there at Oxford. Their program is going in a direction. All their sports are good, Caleb. I mean, we watched their girls play in the state tournament in volleyball. We watched their girls play in the state tournament in basketball, or state championship in basketball. We watched their boys win in baseball last year. We watched their boys, one of the only teams to beat Jacksonville in basketball last year and win the county in Calhoun County in basketball. They're good at everything. Larry Davidson's athletic director over there does a fantastic job. This is going to be a battle of quarterbacks. That's my breakdown on it. Jacksonville's a 4-point favorite, which some people say, hey, how are they favored? Because what they've done on the field, I can see it. But you know as well as I do, they're hosting this game. It's going to be a tough game, and both of these guys are going to get tremendous looks at what both of these guys are going to see in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be a fun game. I'll tell you another sport you didn't mention with Oxford is wrestling. Pretty dang good at that.
Yeah, year in and year out, buddy.
Yeah, so that's why they built a wrestling room for them there in that new.
That's correct.
They've earned it for sure. So
that's correct.
Yeah, looking at this matchup, I mean, it's two teams that outside of the best teams they've played, for Jacksonville, the best team they've played is Hanley, and they lost that one by 8. But I think that game being early in the had it been later in the year, I think Jacksonville wins the football game, honestly. But I think with it early in the year, Jacksonville was still kind of gaining some confidence, and even when they lost, I think playing Hanley as well as they did, getting down, coming back, tying it, all that. I think that really gave this team some confidence. Hey, we can be one of those teams that can go and compete. And it's a group that has built up a ton of confidence. They're going to be dangerous for a lot of these groups, being able to spread the football out, throw it around. You look at the other side for Oxford, their 2 losses this year is 1-point loss to Hartselle and then 28-14 against Clay Chalkville. And outside of Thompson, not many teams have played Clay Chalkville that close this year. So they outscored the other 7 teams 265-87. And for Oxford, you better gear up because next week, yes, you're at home, but you're getting a very, very good Athens team coming in. So I think it's an important game for both sides. Stay healthy, keep doing the things that you've been doing well, and it should be a very fun football game for those 2 teams there at Jacksonville on Friday night. You talked earlier about Pisgah Stadium probably being packed with North Jackson coming and all that. Well, that's a place that you better get there early on Friday
Yep,
night if you want to get a seat at Jacksonville to watch
that's
that
correct.
game because it is going to be packed. So should be a lot of fun there. Well, that's going to do it for us this week and this episode of Road to the Blue Map. Obviously, a little bit different look. It's a different day. We'll be back on Tuesdays next week and start gearing up for the playoffs and breaking down all these playoff matchups and getting you set up for round 1. And we'll talk mainly North next week. It'll be mainly there'll be a couple of South games that we'll mention, talk about a little bit, that type of stuff. It'll be mainly North next week, and then once we get into round 2, it'll be full board 1 through 7A, talking about North, South, all of it together. So should be a lot of fun here soon, and we're getting into the favorite part of the year. It goes fast. I love all of it, but now that we're getting in the playoffs, you can't beat playoff football, especially here in the state of Alabama. And gearing up to see who's going to be at Bryant-Denny Stadium playing for a state championship, having a chance to raise up a blue map. So we will be back. We didn't have a Saturday show this past week. We had some things kind of come up that kept us from doing it. We will be back with a Saturday show this week. Myself, Bo, Corey will be with us as well. So we'll get his perspective on the South as we gear up for the playoffs. We'll probably start previewing just a couple of those matchups and a couple of those games and stuff as we talk about some of those games on Friday, and then next Tuesday we'll go full board with it right here, Road to the Blue Map. And be expecting us Saturday morning about 9 o'clock, and that's when we will do our Saturday morning show. You can also find Bo if you want to get scores immediately on Friday night. The Final Drive up there in Fort Payne, you can check him out and find them on Facebook and also on the radio, and check them out with a great scoreboard show there to recap a lot of the action around Northeast Alabama, and then we'll recap the whole state Saturday. So another good one, Bo, and we will check out all these games starting tomorrow night. Again, you can find Gardendale, in their game tomorrow night with Hueytown on the AHSAA TV network. I'll be broadcasting that game, so you can check that out. And then, Bo, I can tell you I will have something set up so that I can watch Sylvania and Fife and make sure that I check out what's going on in that ball game tomorrow night because that's going to be a ton of fun. So,
Hey, you better turn your volume down because you're going to hear some collisions.
Yeah, there's going to be some pads popping in that one, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That'll do it for us. We'll be back again on Saturday. Make sure to check us out and getting ready for the playoffs. So for Bo Starkey, I'm Caleb Brooks.